Welcome to the Recruiter Startup Podcast. My name's dualta, and in this podcast series, I will be speaking to investors, advisors, entrepreneurs, and recruiters who are based all over the world, and we'll be discussing how to set up, scale, and operate a world-class recruitment company. Now, I've interviewed hundreds of guests at this point, and one of them has really stood out, and that's Joe Mullings. And luckily, when we were traveling in the States recently, we were over in LA meeting our clients and in Miami. And our clients are mainly UK-owned recruitment firms. Joe reached out and said, can you help us grow our company? We need to find best-in-class recruiters in the USA who'd like to move to Delray Beach. So we were in Miami, so we drove up and we got into the office and checked out his whole media studio setup. Incredible business, amazing people. And we, as a result, have been retained by them to help them build it out and look for future leaders to launch offices around the country later in the year and the following year. So really exciting times, and it was great to sit down and discuss, recruitment and how they do it a bit differently. But part of what we said we do is we would interview some of the people that have worked for them for a long time, and that's who today's guests are. It's not a sales pitch. Most of the people who listen to this won't be eligible to be in the process for an American-owned company. So just give you an insight under the hood at a world-class search firm that make more on a per-desk average than I've ever come across and are pushing the boundaries of the way things are done. So the two guests are, first up, it's Giovanni who's been with Joe for over 10 years now. His first real professional job, and he's a full-on character, million miles a minute, really driven, spends his time flying around the world, meeting with executive leaders and, working with his team in order to provide the best search solutions. Interesting guy, hyper smart. I think, you'll get all of that from the podcast, how driven he is, how work comes first, and it was an interesting insight. Afterwards, and I've grouped both of these podcasts together, it's Holly Scott, and I want to get Holly on again, and I must apologise. I recorded the interview with Holly on Anchor, and some of it, the sound isn't great, but her content is amazing. One of the most impressive recruitment leaders I've come across. Holly's been in the industry and with Joe for over, I think it's 25 years. They've gone from being a traditional hit the phones, sit at your desk, typical agency to flying around on a private jet, having full-on joint media, speaking at events, becoming thought leaders, and pushing the boundaries of the way the industry is run. It's really interesting to get her journey, what it all means to her, why she stayed so long, and what keeps her still excited after all these years. And yeah, really appreciate both their time, and I really want to get Holly on again. We've changed from Anchor to Zencaster for recording now, thank God. So any remote podcast I'll do will probably have better sound. I'll probably have to figure out just a little bit of a few things on my end to increase maybe a better microphone on the laptop. I've got some good ones that I bring on the road with me. But anyway, I'm digressing. Hope you enjoy this one, guys. World-class recruitment company. As a recruitment nerd like I am, getting under the hood at a firm that makes this much money with so little manpower and does it in a different way really blows my mind. Over to the Mullings Group. And we are live. Welcome to the Recruiter Startup Podcast. Giovanni Laricelli, is that right? Have I said it right?
Pretty close, Loricella.
Laricella, okay. Well, lovely to have you. And is this your first time on a podcast or have you done this multiple times?
I've done a few podcasts before.
How did they go? Did they go okay?
I was speaking with Joe Mullings, so it was quite comfortable. I've been working with him for a decade, and he was sitting right across from me.
All right, very good. What did you talk about?
Oh, we were talking about the industry. So it was topics that we know quite a fair bit about, whether it's structural heart or surgical robotics or neuromodulation. So stuff that rolls off the tongue.
Lovely. So you have been in recruitment for 10 years, all with the Mullings Group. How did that come about?
How did it come about? So how did I end up joining?
Yeah, how did you end up joining?
So it's the truest and probably the funniest story. So I thought I was going to have the next 5 years of my life all wrapped up because I had been accepted to a PhD program and pretty much checked out knowing that I was going to just do my PhD and that was that. And so then when I was waiting, because I had about another 6 months before my program started, I said, well, what am I going to do? So do what you love. So I became a barista at Starbucks because I love coffee. And then about 3 months before my program was supposed to start, I received a letter saying that the two schools could not merge together, so there was no stipends to pay their PhD. So I was more than glad to pay for my PhD if I wanted to continue doing so, but they didn't have enough money to pay me. So I said that wouldn't work. And so then I was like, okay, well, I'm not having done business and having a degree, I'm not going to just continue working at Starbucks. It was fun while it lasted, so I got to go back out and find something. So ended up spamming my newly minted resume all over Craigslist. And one really early morning that I was having no plans to receive a call back, Holly Scott called me back, and I had no idea anything about the company or anything like that. And then she invited me on after our first call because we hit it off and we had a lot of overlap and I would say good initial feelings of just personal connection. She invited me in and then explained to me exactly what this was all about. And then it just folded into me jumping in and saying that they wanted to do much more international business. And that was my forte. I love traveling and flying all over the world. So they gave me a whack at it. And 10 years later, here I am.
Wow. And what was your PhD going to be in?
International economics.
Okay. Was that a lot to walk away from after studying for so long? What did you originally want to be?
That's too tough of a question. I have no idea. My bachelor's program was in finance, and then by the time I had graduated college, I was lucky enough. I'm obsessed with traveling. So I think by the time I was done with university, I was already at like 20 countries or something like that. And I had lived in Turkey for a summer and Germany for a summer. My family's originally from Sicily. I was born in Niagara Falls, New York. So Canada was my backyard. And so I really just had a lot of open-endedness that I could have done. So I wasn't locked on some sort of family plan of you're going to be a lawyer, you're going to be a doctor. Actually, all my family, they own hair salons on the luxury side. And so I was heir to taking over 3 or 4 hair salons between the Buffalo, New York, and Toronto area. And when they used to wake me up at 3 o'clock in the morning and drag me downstairs to learn how to shampoo or cut a hair before I had to go to school in 3rd grade, 5th grade, 7th grade, by the time that they told me that they want to take over the hair salon, I was about 13 years old when I had a definitive, no, I'm going to go to college. And so I didn't really know what I wanted to be. I just know I needed to get a degree. And then after that, I knew I loved reading and I was obsessed with school and I was obsessed with traveling. And so my last semester of university, I ended up having a very strange story, but a good friend of mine who I ended up making some money for because I was trading for a day trading account from him. I made him a bunch of money and he wanted to go to retire in Costa Rica, which he quickly figured out he couldn't. I ended up meeting a guy who offered me a job, and this was during the recession. And he said, "You want to move to Costa Rica?" So I graduated on December 19th. 2 days later, I was in Costa Rica. And when I showed up, the guy who offered me the job died a week before, and no one told me. And so then I was in Costa Rica, and I didn't want to fly back because there was no opportunity back in Florida. So I ended up running into a guy who I had met during one of my times interviewing my last semester of university. And he's like, "I don't have enough money to pay you, but I can give you food and shelter." And so I said, "Well, why not? I got nothing else better going for me." So did that. And then 9 months later, I went to work one day and never saw the guy again. And so then I ended up hearing about medical tourism, which was really exploding in Costa Rica. And I had a really good Colombian friend, and by that time I could speak Spanish. So I just decided that I was going to pursue it somewhere else, and I ended up flying down to Colombia, living in Colombia for a little bit, emulating the platform that I learned in Costa Rica. And then when I went to go pitch it to the government to get support to really get more of a brand name for it, they ended up buying the platform off me before I even launched it. And then I had enough money to move back to South Florida and have a little bit of playtime with the money that I had, so I could pay off my own student loans and everything like that. And then that's when I decided I was going to go for my PhD. So studied for the entrance exam, got in, and then the rest of the story I already told you. And then I joined the Mullings Group.
I was listening to Joe on the Recruiting Animal show last night, and he was tying the host in knots. It was very good, actually. I don't know if you've ever caught that podcast, but it's very punchy and a lot of shouting and all the rest. So it's tough for the guest to navigate it. It's tough for the listener to listen to it sometimes as well. One of the things that he mentioned was that he never wants to take a shot at somebody to join his company if they haven't faced adversity in their life before, because he doesn't want to be the test project for their first ever adversity. How did he test you on that front? Was it from your travels?
How did he test me in terms of the gateway of hiring me, or has the testing stopped?
And to find out what adversity you had faced. Like, you seem like this highly successful, polished guy that just went from success to success.
I think there was natural dialogue, and keep in mind this is 10 years ago in the firm, right? So a lot's changed since. A tremendous amount has changed, to be honest with you. So I would say it was a natural course of good dialogue and just feeling each other out, which led to more, I would say, positive emotions of working together. And then it was not necessarily the challenges or the adversities beyond the stories I've already told you, which probably satiated or checked that box of what he was looking for. It was more along the lines of the opportunity that was looking ahead. So going back to what I had talked to you, the predominant portion of my interview and time spent dialoguing was the opportunity of doing much more international expansion for the firm, and my passion or interests of an ability, given my status of life of not having anything weigh me down at that point, and I could be on a plane and fly around the world for however long or short. I was just willing and able to take on something from scratch and build out an international practice. And I don't think any of us had the answer, but I believe he saw the willingness in my eyes and body language that he was willing to give it a shot.
And evidently it worked out. The building an international practice really interests me. I take it he wasn't flying you around the world in a private jet from day one. Were there hard yards that you had to accomplish before the business started like heavily investing in you?
Well, I can tell you, I still haven't been on a private jet. So I'm the one that's usually sitting next to the bathrooms flying around the world, and that's still fine with me. I got it down to a science at this point.
Very good. But were you straight on aeroplanes is what I'm asking, or was there like an apprenticeship of sorts in the industry that you went through before you took on like building out a practice area that's quite cool?
So to answer your question, it wasn't this blind, let's see what you can do. And, tell me which conference or country you want to fly to, and then let me send you over there, and hopefully you come back with something. It wasn't like that. So I joined. I would say before I got on a plane internationally, I was with the company for just shy of 2 years. And so I would say my time on the ground, pounding the phones, emails, reading books, and doing a lot more theory of trying to build something from afar. That took me just shy of 2 years, and just relentless pursuit of, and keep in mind, I was heavily interested in it too, right? So yeah, of course, I would have loved to jump on planes and trains and automobiles and meet all these cool people in person. But given my start in the business and also just starting something from scratch, being able to identify targets that I wanted to go after, and then even just being able to get them on the phone and having good conversation with them, it seemed to be enough at the time, which then led to this foundation of building something out of concrete versus sand. And I think after a few wins, without having to be on planes and trains, allowed me to start building a network of density, and then coming up with some ideas that made the quote unquote business plan of starting to put me on planes and trains a lot more palatable versus just totally taking a whiff at it.
And 10 years later, what does your practice area look like?
Can you be a little bit more specific? What do you mean?
How many people are working in your section? What's your core focus? Which locations have you found that you've ended up doing the most business in? Just an overview of that.
Yeah. So I personally work with a team of between 3 to 4. Just depends on the project and resources at the time. So that's the team that I'm personally running with on business that I've developed. I think, with the exception of Japan, the volume really mirrors the medical device industry. So I do a tremendous amount of business from coast to coast in the US. That's to be assumed. There's a lot of business here for sure. But I would say I built my business in Europe and the UK. So there's a high volume that stretches everything from R&D through commercialization and all levels in Europe and the UK for me. But I do a tremendous amount of asset building for Israeli companies that are pursuing clinicals or commercialization in Europe or the US. And actually, based on the new European medical device regulations that are flipping the world upside down right now, a lot of the Israelis are now looking even further east to China, which that's probably my newest project, and still in total beta mode. But I think that's the point of this podcast, is what keeps me going 10 years later. So my first time to China actually was in 2019. Unfortunately, I'll be going again. Actually, I just got back from Japan. What's today? Thursday. So I got back from Japan on Saturday. I'll be going back next month. So at this point, my practice has really been predominantly split between United States. We've done some Canada. It's just, once again, it mirrors the industry, right? So we've done Canada for sure. We've done a high volume over in Europe and UK. We've done a lot of work for startups over in Israel. We have built out some distribution and commercialization teams that are expanding into Latin America. Interestingly enough, we have done some R&D and early conceptual stuff down in South Africa. We've even done even further clinical and commercial roles in the CIS countries in Russia. And we have done, I want to say, less than a handful of roles at this point over in China for either US or European companies. But based on everything that's changing right now, and even as we've now, quote, made this beta project of mine, which is truly an interest of mine, to really explore China and the Far East. That's why I'm now doing that. That's like my next chapter of interest. So I have a strong foothold in Europe, Israel, UK, and United States, as I mentioned. I want to add on, and now I'm in this exploratory phase of doing so. So, conferences in China now, conferences in Japan, studying the culture, not necessarily the language, not enough time in the day for that quite yet, but that's really where I want to start doing more expansion, because the dynamics of the industry are changing and there's so much opportunity over there. And then just to,
The dynamics of the recruitment industry has changed a lot as well. And Joe's probably at the forefront of media and how that can affect things. How how has that changed your business, and what was that process like? Because the world has really changed over your 10 years there. Oh, when did that? When did like the cameras start becoming part of the role? And like, walk me through how that's affected your individual job and practice area.
the hardcore media has really been implemented over the past 4 years.
Okay.
And I think starting from 4 years ago, each year in chronological order has been just more densified and an educated guess on how to move forward even more, right? By refining the message, by refining the abilities to promote good media out there, which if you look back on what we started 4 years ago versus where we are today, it's nearly night and day. But I think that's with every new product or program. If anything, it's put more pressure on us, because you can't put out media. Well, I guess you can, but if you put out media to quote unquote give yourself a good profile in the industry and allow yourself to be in front of people who you may or may not have met in person, but at least boasting your profile so that people are more aware of you. If you can't back that up with good business, good service, and quality of relationships that you've built, then the media will eventually mean nothing, right? And people will find out soon enough. So if anything, the quality of media has put more pressure on our business to be better at what we are and how we provide service to the industry.
Yeah.
So I'll stop there in case there's any other questions. But yeah, I would say, if anything, it's refined my position and giving us more pressure to tighten up our business.
No, it's a really good answer. Given that, if somebody's looking, like, I know what my listeners will be thinking, these guys are impressive, and these businesses too, and they've got business all over the world. How are they managing to do all this with just 3 people helping you on a delivery side? That seems like a tremendous amount of work for the scale that you're doing. Is there some kind of, I don't know, like, what is it that sets you guys apart in the way that you're able to deliver this work?
So whenever I interview a new person who's looking to join our organization, I've come up with one analogy that I think works for me. There's a character, there was a series called Entourage, and on Entourage, there was this character called Ari Gold. And when you meet him or when you watch him, right? I mean, constant phone in hand, overly working all the time. We'll take a phone call at his son's or his daughter's birthday, whatever it may be, right? And you can look at it as a little bit of an extreme, of which obviously it is. That's the character that he plays.
My wife's looking at me aggressively right now.
Yeah. You know what I'm talking about. So I mean, that's what it's like here. I mean, we don't have national laws, right? So it's not some of the Europeanness that overlaps with you have guaranteed 30 days off or whatever have you. I mean, if you ever were to be a fly on the wall, there are people who come in here at their leisure on Saturday and Sundays, right? After working 60 hours a week, 70 hours a week between Monday and Friday. And they're still coming in here on their board shorts at 1 o'clock in the afternoon because they just couldn't get something done in that Monday through Friday. I would say,
what motivates those people to do that? That's pretty, like, it's
part of the interview process, right? I mean, I think if you ultimately get hired and you make it onto our team, we're all, whether or not you're brand new or you've been here for a long time, you're cut from the same cloth. We don't, the process and the interview process that we have to be able to bring people on our team, if you do end up making it through, you are cut from the same cloth. So it's a healthy blend of, we love the people that we work with. It's a healthy blend of, we love the industry that we play in. We are all somewhat competitive by nature. It's just how the game works. We all support one another. We all want to do our best. We're all probably workaholics to a healthy definition. Maybe our spouses or significant others don't agree with that, but that's once again why we're all cut from the same cloth. So how do we do so much with saying
So little.
resources? You know, I take calls on my holidays, right? I'm the king of long weekends. I don't take, 1 week vacations. And even if I do, I'm used to traveling around the world and dealing with time zone anyways, that, I take calls, I take emails, I call my team with tea in front of me in the morning and making sure that I run through everyone and so they're set up for the day. I work on the weekends, they work on the weekends. It's one of those things where checking out's pretty hard because it's what we love to do. And I think after a while, I think the first couple of years in this business are always hard because you're trying to find a balance and understand who you are and overlap that with what we expect, but what you also want to do with your career here. But once you start finding that cadence and that balance, it gets easier in the sense of how you deal with it. It actually doesn't ever get easier when you superficially look at the workload and what it takes to do it. It gets easier because you know how to manage it better. So we're able to accomplish a lot with a little because we're Spartan warriors. That's pretty much how it works.
And I think we could leave it right there. That was really interesting, Giovanni, and I thank you for your time. This has been really great, and hopefully we can get you on as a guest again in the future.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you for the time.
Take care.
You as well.
Hello, it's Holly.
Holly Scott, how are you today?
Great. How are you, Dualta?
I am fantastic, except, do you know what would make my life a lot better?
Let me guess. Being here with me in Delray?
Yeah. I am in the midst of a foggy storm here in the south of England. It's the winters get me down here, but anyway, I'll not depress you. We're here to talk about you and your wonderful life. So, can you jump into how you got into recruitment for me?
Sure. Be happy to. So it was actually an interesting twist. I was in college for psychology with a minor in business, and I was planning to go to grad school and pursue counseling and so forth. And a friend of a friend introduced me to the idea of human resources, and with human resources within a business setting. And I really liked the idea of leveraging the human impact side of it in a business setting, and also the income potential. So I fell into an internship actually with a person who came from a strong HR background and had decided to open up a search firm. And when I saw people around me that had were able to craft their life the way they dreamed it, have the work, family, travel, whatever they desired, and have the income potential of many who went to school to be doctors or lawyers, I said, okay, this is me. And that's what I've been doing ever since. So I've been in it since college.
And was working for Joe your first job?
No, I actually had a 18-month stint with a division. This was that first organization that courted me with an internship, and then I was hired on, and that was with Management Recruiters in Boca Raton. That's the owner there gave me my first shot. I heard about Joe Mullings. He was at the time down in Miami, Coral Gables area. and his within management recruiters, he was blowing numbers out of the water. So he was doing exceptionally well because all of our rankings were shared. He had an MRI office as well,
Right.
in the Southeast region. So I knew who he was, and they knew who I was because my numbers were very strong, especially I was rookie, and so long story short, we met and we discussed, potentially coming over, and I haven't looked back since. That was, gosh, 23 years in February, and when we interviewed, we still laugh about it. Said,
Wow.
I don't do well with women. I said, bring it on, basically.
And you became his work wife.
Exactly. And I said to him, look, I want to do this for a few years. I want to learn from you. And at some point, who knows, maybe I'll go do this on my own. And he was like, great, let's do this. And I said to myself, I'm going to do this as long as I continue to grow. And you know what? I've never stopped growing. And I've found that together, not just Joe and I, but now the entire team energizes me and gets me going in my worst days, where and they're more fun in my best days. So it's been a phenomenal road, and I wouldn't change anything about the coming up on 23 years I've spent with the Mullings Group.
And how do you complement each other's skill sets, would you say?
So he's a visionary. He forever has seen things that others don't see, including me. He sees the future. He sees where things are going, and he sees abilities and opportunities that most, not just me, but most people in general just don't have the ability to see until they're already in it. So his vision and my ability and interest in executing to an extremely high level have been what have really been the glue for us over 2 decades plus.
Do you help him? Do you help him refine that vision? Does he come with is it the typical entrepreneur style where he comes with 50 different ideas, and you're like, well, let's look at what the implementation looks like on that?
I would not. No, not in the sense where he comes with 50 ideas. He is not. He is hyper focused. By the time he speaks about a vision he has, it's been in his mind and in his thoughts and dreams, and 24/7 for quite some time. So it's fairly crystallized. There have been avenues we've explored and realized that they weren't the right outcome, and we adjust and move forward. And that's through open conversation and trial and error and so forth. So yeah, I think it's been more a balance of, hey, this is what I'm thinking here. And I will say, hey, that sounds crazy, but I could see where you're coming from, and then we'll go downstream with it, and we may adjust, or we may find that it's the next greatest thing. So he's very open to input, even if it's not something he agrees with. So we've had that real open, trusting relationship that has adjusted and created where we are now.
Can you kind of give me a rundown on how the model evolved over time?
The model of our organization,
because early days, I'm sure it was you and Joe in a low cost outfit, billing to survive, and now there's private jet on standby, and it feels like for anybody who's a small business owner, it feels like there's a big gap between that and getting to the private jet. How did that evolve?
Yeah, well, going back to our early days when I moved over to work with Joe, I knew that I was going to be working under the toughest coach that I'd ever experienced, and that was our foundation, and that's been the foundation that we've stuck with, because especially in the southeast of Florida, southeast of the United States. Excuse me, it's historically a sleepier area. A lot of people in HR came down to retire. Management recruiters was was and has been a franchise business. So at that time, we were built on sheer hard work, passion, and relentless drive to succeed. That foundation. We were working from before sun came up till late at night because we wanted to do things that no one had done before. And that foundation was, at the time, tons of phone time. We were on the phone 4 to 5 hours a day. We were making 100 to 200 calls a day. This was right at the cusp when faxes started. I started in the industry when we transitioned from faxes to emails. We were calling in, we were getting lists of companies, employees under the radar, doing all kinds of things because we did want to build that foundation. I mean, to the greatest degree we possibly could. It was sheer hard work and intelligence around improving efficiencies. And then the business, and you're right, we were in a smaller office, we were in a bullpen, and that transition when we moved to Del Rey, expanded. We got bigger as a company and as a team. But our real core foundation of work ethic and drive to succeed has not gone away. Now, we are also now in a point in our life where we have had families, we've grown, we're not working in the same place in the bullpen 24/7. We still think about work all the time. But in terms of evolution, now we have an incredible team who are also ambitious and want to drive and make their mark on the world. And our primary goal is to bring them up and mentor them and bring them along to have success in the industry and make their mark now too. So now, as we look around, the media that has been added to our team over the last few years has accelerated incoming business to a pace of which we need your help on recruiting recruiters. We are expanding and looking to keep our bar for our clients at an excellent level. So we have the incoming business, and we're staying on top of it through the current team. So the revenue's there. I mean, there's no shortage of opportunity to make the income, and that's where you see, the private jets and everything else. It's become really a need, necessity. When Joe needs to be X here or there, you have to weigh out: do you wait on the American when they get delayed 5 times in Houston, or do you just do what you got to do because your best time is spent in the office or with a client? So this is our world today, and it's all based on client need and drive and what our clients hire us to do.
Can you explain how your structure works?
Which structure? For
just in terms of so there's principals at the head. You've a lot of legacy accounts and relationships. Like, what are the different jobs that recruiters are doing? You have a sourcing team, you have an account management team. Can you kind of run through how that model works?
Oh, sure. So yeah, I think from talking with many recruiters over the years, I find we are different in one big way. We really don't care at all about what people call us. Okay, I mean, we're a flat organization. We are all on the same team. I don't care if you've been here a year or if you've been here 17 years like Matt. We treat each other with respect, and we embrace each other for our strengths. Now, with that said, anyone who comes into our organization within the first, really realistically, year to 2 years, unless they have a background in search and understand med tech, they're going to be in some sort of I'm going to use the word apprenticeship, because they're going to be piggybacked with an existing team dedicated to a search. So if a client calls me, Holly Scott, says, look, I have 5 positions I need to fill here in the next 4 to 6 months, and they range from individual contributor to a VP, then what we will do is, based on priority, we will assign a team And based on strengths, people who are ready and capable to take it on, they will be responsible for certain searches. However, as a team, maybe it's 2, maybe it's 3 people on that team, including the person who may be fairly new. We will work together to share targets, to share our plans, to share our messaging in the marketplace, to share any outbound, perhaps messaging or marketing or media content that we put together. All of that is shared. So we really are a hyper team environment when it comes to what our client need. Our philosophy is, let's get to the placement the fastest. And if that means that I have a search for a CEO that I want to run on my own because I want the full commission, versus I can toss it out to 3 or 4 people in my organization and have that search done within a week in terms of my short list, I'm going to hand it off, because my goal is to keep more good business coming in rather than think selfishly. We do not put up with the selfish, it's all for me or nothing. That doesn't work here. We're very much a team environment. Even our individuals here, a year or 2 years or less, are piggybacked into existing teams that embrace them. And we don't have it any other way. We actually, our hiring process specifically looks for that. So to directly answer your question, you're put on a team. The person who's bringing in the business, if it makes sense, will remain the primary client liaison. But there's often times where it may make perfect sense and be perfectly fine with the client if I say, hey, you know what, on this particular project, Wesley's going to be your point person, or Britt's going to be your point person, or Maria, or whomever it might be, because they're that good. They're that good and they're that capable.
Will different people in the team be doing different jobs?
Yes, and that's, a lot of that is we want to make sure that we're efficient. We don't want people overlapping to the best of our ability, because that wastes time. And it plays to their strengths and also their interests. I have individuals who have made very good money, 200K or better, and have no interest in
take home, not build.
Take home, yeah, take home, making decent, good money, and do not want to interface with clients. Don't want to book their own business. They don't want to have to go through that upfront, going out, marketing yourself. They're not on that sales side, but they love the thrill of going out and finding those perfect candidates, those diamonds in the rough. So there's opportunity on both sides, and it's just because you bring in business doesn't necessarily mean you're going to earn more money. We can the money and the opportunity is on both ends.
Okay, and with regard to your own management style, when you're managing a team, what type of things are you looking for when you're running those meetings with them? Like what's the measurement that you're gauging their success on?
Definitely their ability to, and their interest and ability in what they're doing on their own, to learn and get up to speed as quickly as possible. So the first 30 days when someone's hired in, we do not judge by number of interviews or candidates or placements. That doesn't work, because it's not a fair measurement. They only have certain control over that. What we do look for in that first 30 and even up to 60 days is their ability to learn, how much work and planning they're putting in on their own, and how efficient and effective they are when given direction. So it's really the ability to take direction well, be coachable, have that ability to engage, and be able to learn and be willing to put in the time and effort.
What do you love about your job?
Oh gosh, there's so many things I love about it. I love the industry. First of all, I love the medtech industry, and if I took the medtech piece out of it, I would still absolutely love recruiting, because I love the gray area we play in when we work with individuals and with clients that have a need. The client may have a said need, but then the uncovered need may be different. And I love problem solving with them to figure out what the best fit is. And with individuals, and making career changes on a daily basis, that to me, that never gets old. The person that says, geez, I can't believe this opportunity. It's been incredible, and all of those things that I was really hoping for have come true here. Those calls never get old. And even the individuals who say, you know what, Holly, I can't do this because X, Y, and Z, but I've come so far with you in the process, and you've been tremendous to work with. You've helped me crystallize that this is not the right opportunity for me. I like those calls too, because I want to help people facilitate their dreams, and that piece of it is something that I hold dear, and that's from our business as well as from our team. There's nothing now that gets me more excited than when I see my team members have big wins. One of them just booked one of their first clients, and another just closed a significant placement. And to me, that was like, yes, that I remember the feeling when I did that for the first time. It's amazing. It's amazing. I'm kind of a mama bear around here, so I look.
Yeah, of course.
And I think, man, these they're incredible. I know as a mama bear, we all think our own kids are the best, but I'm right. These guys are the best.
Talk to me about the day that Joe came in and said, hey, I know we're doing well at this traditional search stuff, but I'm going to change the world of recruitment. I'm going to put media on the front, and we're going to flip this thing on its head. What was your reaction, and what was the transition period to getting to the point where you're at now from that moment?
Well, I think that there were some micro steps along the way that were pinnacle to that turn, right? So one of them was we landed a business, a project that was unlike anything we'd done from size, scope, magnitude, and requirements than we had historically done in our capabilities. And we beat out 27 search firms to get this project, and we weren't going to let there wasn't going to be anything that was going to get in our way of being successful. And one of the things that we realized quickly was we needed to amplify our efforts. The old way of picking up the phone and one-to-one was just, unless we were going to hire 100 people, it was just not going to work. So again, Joe being the visionary, he came and he said, look, we're going to start speaking on behalf of our client in media on things that are going to create buzz and awareness. And with that, knowing that the phone is where we're all ingesting information these days. We're not picking up the phone unless we know who it is. We're not responding, and we're not even office phones are almost ridiculous at this point. So the game was already evolving.
What year was this?
This was 2015. 2015. This was the fall of 2015 and into 2016 is when things really, really got interesting with us on the media side.
Walk me through that whole process then.
So it was, we need to figure out a way to transition our outbound business into inbound business. And in other words, I need to be able to get people coming into us to increase the volume capabilities that we can present good individuals to our clients. So what we did with that particular client at the time was we created a media partnership, and we hired at the time individuals that were our first in wave of a media team. They were contractors, consultants, but people that Joe knew and trusted because of past relationships that were able to do things. So we could basically figure it out. And we became a voice for the client quickly, and we realized quickly that it was working. So once that sample size was realizing the effect that we wanted, then at that point it became more clear that this was going to be a long-term play in the organization. And the theory that Joe presented to me and then to the organization in those early days was, when the railroad was invented, it wasn't because the person wanted to invent the train. it was because they wanted to be able to carry the supplies from point A to point B and own that expressway, right? Own the opportunity to transport goods and services and be able to have that real estate. And as 2014, 2015, 2016 proved, and you look in retrospect, the media channels and the way people engage with individuals through followers and through content became pinnacle to individual success. So that's where we decided that we were going to own the railway, right? So we decided to take LinkedIn as the professional playground and create opportunities specifically around medtech so that we are a voice of the industry. And the only reason we were able to do this successfully is because we had 2+ decades of real work behind us that we could augment. I mean, we couldn't have done that had we been starting day one, because we had no credibility. But what we did was we took our credibility and experience and amplified it with media. So that's what happened. So then we started speaking on behalf regularly about our clients and giving away information. That all the last few years have been on media, gifts to the industry. I said I would do this because I wanted to be in a phone business. I never wanted to be in front of the camera. That wasn't for me. That wasn't of interest. And the only reason I agreed to this in those early days is because it was agreed that the only way we would do it right is if we were adding value and if people found it valuable and found it credible and that we're authentic. So that's been the mantra: is this authentic? Is it credible? Is it valuable? Are people going to get something out of it? It's not about us sitting in front of a camera and talking about ourselves. We're talking about things that help people. And with that, people become more interested and they become followers and then fanatics, where they follow everything that we put out. And on a daily basis, I get feedback of, wow, you really helped so-and-so. They just landed their first job, or that really helped me in a time when, I really couldn't talk to my spouse about it because I was struggling. These emails that I get, these private messages that validate what we do has been unreal. So that's been an incredible addition to satisfaction that I wasn't aware of when this media thing came up.
Holly, you have a meeting to go to. I've got 1,000 more questions. Let's save that for part 2, part 3.
Sounds like a plan. I'm here.
Thank you, Holly. You're amazing.
Thank you. I appreciate the time. You all take care.
If you enjoyed that podcast, hold on to your hat. I've got Joe Mullings coming up very soon. He's recorded it video-wise on his end, so I'll have bits of that coming out over LinkedIn over the next little while. And we had a bit of a chat about the industry. So all that to come. Probably tomorrow, I'll try and get that out. And if you could do me a favor and share this with other recruiters, that would be much appreciated. And also, a big thank you to the people who help our business running smoothly, to Interprotect, who go chase after people who don't pay their fees. With backdoor Barry banging on your door, so don't mess with me. Barry's in my corner. And you don't want him in somebody else's corner, because I've had that too. Also, to Interview, who we really use their platform for their intros specifically, but you could use it for sending video interviews to clients. And we're getting a good response rate, and it's just part of our overall solution. And to JobAdder, our ATS system, love JobAdder, used it for a long time. Then we decided to go to Bullhorn, then hated Bullhorn, then went back to JobAdder, and really appreciate our relationship with them. And to members only who we're speaking for this week, we're going up to London talking about America, why you should move there and why you should set up there, along with a few other people who do visas and accounting and contractor management and all that type of stuff. And yeah, great group. I've been to a few of their events. We've spoke at a few, and if you're a recruitment leader, well worth looking out for them. And we're looking for more sponsors. because I'm going to be launching another business line later in the year. So if you're in the rack tech space, love to hear from you. All right, that is all for today. Thank you so much for listening. Again, if you enjoyed it, please hit me up. Sorry about the sound on that last piece, but we will aim to make sure that it is better from here on in.